Hi, everybody. Welcome to Powerless to Powerful. This is the number one positive side of addiction podcast for success-driven men in recovery. My name is Mark Mascola. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Today's topic. Well, let me begin by asking you a question. How do you define success in recovery? And what does that mean to you? Is it time? Is it quantity of time? Is it quality of time? Is it quality of life? Because the truth is, what I'm going to talk about today, I'll go ahead and give you the topic. The topic is the top character strengths required for living successfully in recovery. I got my outline. This is one of those topics that I could talk on for hours, because if I had to share one thing with a man in recovery, it would be the concept of quit asking yourself what's wrong with you and go figure out what's right with you. Right? The traditional recovery message focuses on character defects and powerlessness. And the way to overcome that is to live in the exact opposite. Live by your character strengths and be the powerful man God created you to be and to become. As a husband, as a father, as a businessman, language I like to use all the time is be an example of God working in, with, for, and most importantly through you. Because the greatest service that you can provide a man who you want to help, the greatest service you can provide the sick and suffering is first and foremost to no longer be one of them. It's like the whole concept of, somebody who's broke won't do a real good job giving financial advice. And the same is true in recovery. There's the bunch, and I get it. There's the bunch, I've been around the program for 20 years. Well, I get that, but how's that going for you? Right? 20 years and only succeeding on the first couple of months, that just repeating the first handful of months and then relapsing is not 20 years around. Doesn't equate to any level of success. It equates to 20 years of failure. Here's what I want. If I wanted to do, I'd like to do lots of things with this podcast, but I want to give men a perspective that's different than some of the traditional recovery message that you get. Right? One of the things that I'm going to talk about today, and the title of today's session is the top character strengths required for living successfully in recovery. That's why I asked the question, what does living successfully look like? Quality of time, quantity of time? Because I've been around this thing for going on 26 years now, and I've seen a lot of guys with a lot of time in recovery whose lives are failures. They're failures as husbands, they're failures as fathers, they struggle financially. It's not supposed to be that way. You're supposed to get this clean and sober thing done, but then you're supposed to live a life that is defined by, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out here, the core desire of every man is the word fulfillment. Think about that word as it equates to your recovery. Fulfillment means to equal or exceed expectation. What do you expect out of yourself? One of the phrases we hear at meetings all the time, resentment is premeditated expectations. Okay, well, whatever. Don't expect happiness is based on not having any expectations. Well, let me tell you, you better surround yourself with men who have an expectation of you that will help you raise your expectation of you until you're capable of raising it yourself. Because I say all the time, I surround myself with people who don't expect me to go and relapse. They expect me to stay clean and sober. Why? Because that's the life I've lived. My wife, my kids, they have an expectation of me. My mother, my friends, you're listening to this podcast, you have an expectation of me. I'm not going to come on here after, last year celebrating a quarter of a century in recovery and do a recovery-based podcast for men and say, oh man, I had a slip. Oh, I had a relapse. You think, what the hell? Why am I listening to this guy? The greatest level of service that you can provide the sick and suffering is to no longer be sick and suffering. And what I'm going to share with you today will help you do that. The top character strengths required for living successfully in recovery. So here's the 30,000 foot view. If you go to powerlesstopowerful.com, right there on the home page, there is a video to watch that talks about something I created called the Character Strengths Challenge. Within this challenge, there are 30 of these character strengths. And what you do is you go through and it's something free. So if you'll go there, just watch the video, click the link, and you can discover if the character strengths that I'm going to talk about today, if you, number one, have them, or number two, need to develop them. Because what I want you to understand in this world of the traditional recovery message, again, that focuses on defects of character, you have no defects of character. You have strengths, and you have strengths you have yet to develop. Now listen, we're not all at the same place with these strengths. The ones that I'm going to go through today, some of us are farther ahead because it's part of our personality. It's part of our makeup. It's part of the characteristics of the person that God made us to be and to become. So some people who have some of these character strengths have more of an advantage than somebody that struggles with them. But if you want to see where you stand with all 30 of the character strengths, I can tell you, this thing will change. It'll put the power in your recovery. It'll empower you in your marriage and your health, your finances, the whole shooting match. Just go to powerlesstopowerful.com, watch the video, click the link. Okay, enough of that. So fulfillment means to equal or exceed expectation. Developing the strengths that I have, using the ones that I have, developing the ones that I don't have. So I'm going to go through this list, and I want you, as you listen to this list, to ask yourself the question, is this a strength I have, or is this a strength I need to develop? So the first one, clarity and perspective. Seeing an issue from all angles to provide understanding and guidance. Seeing an issue from all angles. So listen, you'll listen to this podcast and you'll hear, there are times it'll sound like I'm throwing rocks at 12-step meetings. I'm not. Believe me, I'm not. I'm a firm believer that going to meetings and interacting with my sponsor and being part of the fellowship saved my life. It was the first step of this. But I also want you to understand that there is a clarity and a perspective that you have to understand how those meetings fit into you living a fulfilling life because of your recovery, not just being successful in recovery. So everything that I do, I want to help you have a broader clarity and perspective, because I'm going to tell you, clarity and perspective is not something, it's not one of my core strengths. It's something that I struggle with. Next on the list, courage, strength in the face of fear. You know, you hear the saying all the time, you never know how much courage you have until courage is all you got. You know, as somebody who's, for me, you know, I've stood toe-to-toe with the Goliath of addiction and divorce and bankruptcy, and, you know, had a near-death bleed out from a cancer surgery thing. So I've stared down the barrel of the gun. And I'm grateful that courage is one of my core strengths. It's made my journey here probably a little bit easier, but here again, when I go back to talking about the first one, I struggle with clarity and perspective. So as I've gained clarity and perspective, that's one of the strengths that I have had to work on. It makes the recovery journey a little easier. Discernment. This is a big one. This is one of my lesser strengths. Discernment, the ability to judge well and act cautiously. You can see why it's one that you need to, if you don't have it, you need to develop it to live a fulfilling life in and because of your recovery. Enthusiasm. Having an intense positive energy. You got to feel good about what you're doing here in recovery. I say all the time, you've got to attach positive emotions to the outcomes that you want, not the actions that you're taking. I may not like going to a meeting or calling my sponsor. I may not like, doing some of the things that I have to do to live a fulfilling life in recovery, but I like the results for having done them. I use this as an example all the time. I love to exercise. I love to lift weights. Some people don't like it, but they will attach a positive emotion to the outcome of having a healthy, fit body, so they'll take the actions it takes to create the outcome. That's what I mean when I say attach a positive emotion, be enthusiastic about the outcome, even if you're not enthusiastic about the action. Forgiveness. This is a huge one for men in recovery. The decision to forgive and be forgiven. Forgiveness is an all or nothing proposition. Let me tell you something. If you're going through your step work and you're trying to go have a conversation with somebody and you ask for forgiveness, you better not be in a place where you're not forgiving somebody else. It's an all or nothing proposition. Gratitude. That's a given. Giving thanks and feeling blessed. Right? Wake up every day and be grateful that you're on the path being, living a fulfilling life in recovery and that you're not struggling with, where you were back in the past in addiction. Mental toughness. This is one of the ones that you really need to develop. I'm fortunate. I was, being a college athlete, mental toughness, getting knocked on your ass and getting back up, the ability to push past failure. Again, that's one of the ones like the courage thing that comes easy to me. Optimism, a belief in positive outcomes, right? It's not about the glass half full or glass half empty. It's about having a belief that there is a higher power that has our higher purpose, looking out for our best interest. So optimism. And optimism is a strength that you really need to develop, a belief in positive outcomes. Persistence, choosing to finish what one starts. Persevering. If you don't finish this, persistence is the deal, right? If you have a vision for what you want your life to look like because of your journey in recovery, that is a vision worth persisting for. The husband, the father, the businessman, the impactful leader in your home and in your community that you can be because of your journey in recovery. Resilience. Elasticity, the capacity to bounce back or recover quickly. This recovery thing is hard. It's hard. You're going to bump into things that are going to be challenging. You got to be resilient. Service, the action of doing the work with, for, and alongside of others. I just mentioned a second ago, greatest service you can provide out of all things you can do. Greatest service you can provide the sick and suffering is to no longer be one of them. Spiritual connection is another strength. A trust in, and I just use this, spiritual connection and optimism kind of go hand in hand. A trust in a higher power and higher purpose that creates an unexplained, harmonious result. Your higher power has a higher purpose, and you optimistically need to believe that power is looking out for you. Temperance. This is a huge one. The ability to abstain. Temperance is one of the if there's any man in the world who has struggled with addiction and claims that he has the core strength of temperance, he's lying to himself and he's lying to those around him. Temperance, the ability to abstain, that is one of the strengths that I can promise you, if you've made it to recovery because of addiction, that is one of the ones that is your lesser or your neutral strength. Temperance, the ability to abstain. I've been around, again, 25 plus years. Temperance is a strength that I didn't have, that I had to learn to develop. And the last one that's on the list, truth, the ability to be honest with oneself and others. I tell men all the time, you need to go find at least one guy that you can be truthful with, because being truthful with yourself begins with being truthful with somebody else. We've been lying to ourselves long enough. So that's the end of the list. There were 14 of them. If you want to know where you stand with all 30 of the character strengths, go to powerlesstopowerful.com. Do the free character strengths challenge. It's it's eye-opening stuff. And when you watch that video, you'll hear me say, man, when I discovered this for myself 25 years ago, I made a commitment, a promise to God to share it with as many men as I could. So that's what I'm doing. Grateful you're here. Grateful to be here. This is Mark signing off from Powerless to Powerful, the #1 positive side of addiction podcast for success-driven men. And I'll go ahead and say it. We don't just recover. We go from powerless to powerful. Have a great day wherever you are in the world. You absolutely deserve it. Bye for now.